Here's something that will completely change how you think about cultural migration. The first settlers of Madagascar didn't come from nearby Africa, but sailed over 6,000 kilometers from Indonesia. This discovery turns everything we assume about ancient human movement on its head.
That's fascinating. How did researchers piece together such an unexpected connection?
Well, the evidence is actually woven into the very fabric of their society, quite literally. The traditional Malagasy language has clear Asian roots, and these settlers brought distinctive weaving techniques that you can still see in Madagascar's textiles today. You know what's really interesting? These cultural practices survived across centuries of isolation.
Hmm. So how did these ancient traditions evolve over time?
Oh, that's where it gets really interesting. In the 19th century, there was this huge influx of Chinese silk through new trade routes. The local weavers, especially in the Central Highlands, created something entirely new, these incredible textiles called Akoto Farhana. Like, imagine taking this foreign luxury material and completely transforming it into something uniquely Malagasy.
Well, that must have had some serious cultural implications, right?
Exactly, these weren't just beautiful pieces of cloth. They became powerful diplomatic tools. The royal court would gift these Akoto Farhana to foreign dignitaries and high-ranking officials. It's like, they took this foreign influence and turned it into a symbol of their own cultural power.
So these textiles essentially became a form of soft power diplomacy?
You know, that's exactly right. And what's really mind-blowing is how these weavers created this perfect fusion of influences, Indonesian techniques, Chinese materials, and Malagasy artistic vision. It's like they were doing cultural remix before that was even a thing.
That really challenges our modern ideas about cultural appropriation versus exchange, doesn't it?
Well, that's what makes the story so relevant today. These weavers showed how cultures can adopt foreign elements and transform them into something authentically their own. They weren't just copying, they were innovating, creating something entirely new that spoke to both their traditions and their present moment.
And I imagine this had significant economic implications as well.
Oh, absolutely, these textiles became serious status symbols. The silk alone was expensive, but the real value came from the incredible skill required to make them. You know, it's fascinating how they became this perfect combination of material and cultural capital. Like, wearing one of these pieces wasn't just showing off wealth, it was displaying cultural sophistication.
That reminds me of how luxury brands today try to blend craftsmanship with cultural significance.
Right. And here's what's really powerful about this whole story. It shows how human creativity can bridge these enormous gaps, whether they're across oceans or centuries. These artists maintained their cultural identity while embracing new influences and possibilities. It's actually super relevant to how we deal with globalization today.
In 1885, a single jeweled egg transformed the entire concept of luxury. And now, over a century later, a London restaurant is doing the same thing with West African spices.
That's such an interesting connection. What made you draw that parallel between Fabergé's work and modern cuisine?
Well, I've been researching how Peter Carl Fabergé became the Russian imperial court's jeweler, and it all started with this incredible lapis lazuli Easter egg. The way he elevated a simple object into this masterpiece of engineering and artistry completely changed how people thought about luxury items.
Kind of like how Ikoyi is transforming traditional ingredients into something completely unexpected?
Exactly. You know, Ikoyi's founders, Chef Jeremy Chan and Iri Hassan Odukale, are doing something remarkably similar. They're taking these bold West African spices that have been used for centuries and turning them into these mind-bending culinary experiences.
Tell me more about how they're pushing these boundaries. What makes their approach so revolutionary?
Well, take their signature dish with the onion flour and conch cheese. They combine it with these incredibly complex curry caramelized walnuts that take days to perfect. It's like, just as Fabergé hidden surprises inside his eggs, each of their dishes reveals unexpected layers of flavor and technique.
You know what's fascinating about both? The sheer amount of technical precision involved. I heard each Fabergé egg took years to complete.
Oh my gosh, yes. And what's really interesting is how both Fabergé and Ikoyi use this incredible attention to detail to create moments of pure wonder. Like, Fabergé would spend months perfecting these tiny mechanical surprises inside each egg, while Ikoyi's team spends countless hours experimenting with spice combinations to create these perfect flavor profiles.
That level of dedication must require an amazing amount of vision and creativity.
Absolutely right. And here's what's really fascinating. Both are taking something familiar and completely transforming it. Fabergé took the traditional Easter egg, a symbol everyone knew, and turned it into these elaborate works of art. Similarly, Ikoyi is taking these traditional West African spices and presenting them in ways that challenge everything we think we know about fine dining.
So, what do you think this tells us about the evolution of luxury and creativity?
Well, I think it shows us that true innovation often comes from looking at traditional elements with fresh eyes. You know, Fabergé wasn't just making pretty eggs, he was creating these incredible mechanical marvels that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with precious materials. And now, Ikoyi is doing the same thing with cuisine, showing us that luxury isn't just about expensive ingredients, it's about imagination and execution.
That's really interesting how both manage to balance tradition with innovation. How do they maintain that connection to their roots while pushing forward?
I think it comes down to having a deep understanding of your materials and heritage. Like Fabergé deeply respected the symbolic importance of Easter eggs in Russian culture, while Ikoyi shows profound respect for the traditional use of West African spices. But they both use that understanding as a launching pad for creativity rather than a constraint.
And both seem to have this amazing impact on their respective fields.
Oh, totally. And here's what I find most inspiring. Both show us that luxury isn't about following established patterns, it's about creating new ones. Whether it's through precious stones in 19th century Russia or through innovative cuisine in modern London, they're both proving that true creativity knows no bounds.
Looking toward the future, what do you think this tells us about where luxury and innovation are headed?
From 30 million to less than 1,000 in just one century, but today they're making one of the most remarkable comebacks in conservation history.
That's such a dramatic shift in numbers. What do you think made their recovery possible when so many other species like the quagga weren't so fortunate?
Well, it really came down to timing and awareness. With the bison, conservationists recognized the crisis just before it was too late, when there were still enough animals to build a sustainable population. The recovery from 1,000 to today's 500,000 took incredible dedication and coordination.
It's fascinating how the timing made such a crucial difference. The quagga story really highlights what happens when we act too late.
Exactly. And speaking of preservation efforts, there's this remarkable parallel happening in Brazil during the same period. While North America was working to save the bison, Brazil was developing its own forms of cultural preservation. Take Candido Portinari, for instance, growing up on a coffee plantation. He made it his life's mission to capture Brazilian reality, naked and crude as it is.
So while one group was fighting to preserve the natural heritage, another was working to preserve cultural memory through art.
And you know what's really interesting? Both efforts were happening around the same time that Brazil was establishing its identity in world football. That 1930 national team jersey in the Football Museum represents such a pivotal moment. It's from Brazil's first World Cup appearance.
The timing of all these preservation efforts really shows how the early 20th century was such a crucial period for both natural and cultural conservation.
Right? And here's what's particularly fascinating about Portinari's work. He wasn't just painting pretty pictures. He was documenting the daily lives of coffee workers, their struggles, their dignity, creating this incredible visual record of a way of life that was rapidly changing.
Well, that really connects to what you were saying earlier about the different types of preservation, doesn't it?
Exactly. Whether we're talking about saving a species like the bison, preserving artifacts like that 1930 jersey, or documenting cultural memory through art, it's all about recognizing what's valuable before it's too late. With the quagga, by the time the last one died in Amsterdam in 1883, people barely noticed. But imagine if someone like Portinari had been there to document their significance.
That's such a powerful point about the importance of documentation and awareness.
And it makes me think about what we might be overlooking today. Like, what are our modern-day equivalents of the bison in 1900 or the Brazilian coffee workers that Portinari painted? What aspects of our natural and cultural heritage are we at risk of losing simply because we're not paying attention?
Those questions feel especially relevant given how quickly our world is changing now.
You know what's particularly striking? The success stories, like the bison, show us that it's possible to reverse course when we act decisively. From those few hundred survivors, we've rebuilt a population that, while still far from the original 30 million, at least ensures the species' survival.